The year is 1969, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table with two letters in front of me, both from the University of Wisconsin. And I'm perplexed because typically they say the thin one represents a rejection, the thick one represents an acceptance. And here it is, my stretch school, my dream school to get into. Most students who graduate from my high school don't ever think of going to a place like Wisconsin, because my high school is all black segregated high school. Even though Brown versus Board of Education happened in 1954, most school districts in the South didn't comply with the law. They had to be sued individually before they would desegregate. My school district did not desegregate until 1970. So my entire K through 12 experience was segregated. All black teachers, all black principals, all black school administrators, all black students who sat alongside me. My community is very poor. We're a small farming community in eastern North Carolina. Most kids from my high school go to a historically black college or university. I have 4 thick envelopes sitting over here from North Carolina Central, from Elizabeth City State University, North Carolina A&T, Shaw, my safety schools. So I know I'm going someplace, but my dream is Wisconsin. But why 2 envelopes? Why are they sending me 2 envelopes? So I decided to open the thin one first. And I do. And it says, "Dear Carlton, thank you for your application to the University of Wisconsin. However, we are disappointed to inform you that you do not meet the admissions requirements for out-of-state students to the University of Wisconsin." Devastated, crushed. Here I was growing up in this segregated environment, thinking perhaps this was going to be an avenue for me to get away from having to go into the local drugstore, order a hamburger, and not sit down, because if I sat down, I would be arrested. Or going to the movie theater, one entrance for the mezzanine area, whites only, blacks had to go to the mezzanine or to the balcony. Or going to a local restaurant and refused admittance because we were not allowed to come into the restaurant to have a lunch or dinner. My favorite was going to a local laundromat. You see, I grew up mostly with my grandparents. My parents were teenage parents, and so my grandparents are mostly the ones I identified with most and hung out with the most. And my grandma, God bless her soul, would do laundry at the laundromat when it was too cold to do it at home. And so I'd go along with her to the laundromat. And I see one door that says whites only, the other door that said colored only. And Grandma, looking to protect the innocence of a 5-year-old, would tell me, well, that means, when I'd ask her, that means that if you have colored clothes to wash, you go through that door. Whites, you go through that door. That's Grandma looking to protect the innocence of a 5-year-old who's curious as to why that would be the way it was. My grandfather, on the other hand, was a very, very different kind of guy. I became old enough to understand this insidious thing called segregation, and I talked to my grandpa about it, and Grandpa said to me, and I never forgot it, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission." That's what I tried to convey to all of my kids and my grandkids and my nephews and nieces. No one can make you feel inferior without your permission. Back to the kitchen table, I got this thick envelope from Wisconsin that I'm about to throw away because they just rejected me. But something said, "Open it." I did. "Dear Carlton, we are pleased to offer you a position in the entering freshman class of special scholars called Chancellor Scholars at the University of Wisconsin, contingent upon your agreeing to these conditions. I had to agree to sign up with a mentor, had to agree to sign up with an advisor and had that advisor approve my entire curriculum, had to agree to a 20-hour-a-week work-study job, and had to agree to attain a 2.5 at the end of my freshman year. In other words, Wisconsin was admitting me on probation. Conditional admit. Because they thought perhaps I could do the work, perhaps I couldn't. And so at first I was a little perplexed, a little miffed. And then I remembered, no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. And I said, I'm taking them up on this. Never having gone to Madison, Wisconsin before, I said yes. So I'm going to go to the University of Wisconsin, Madison. And what an incredible place for those of you who have been to Madison. It's an incredible university sitting on Lake Mendota, a mile away, Lake Monona, who, by the way, Otis Redding's airplane went down 2 years earlier. For those who didn't know that, he was going from Cleveland, Ohio, to play a set in Madison, Wisconsin in 1967, and his airplane crashed into Lake Monona. Well, I got to Wisconsin, and I'll tell you, it was beyond my comprehension, the size of the place. The student population was 50 times larger than my hometown. I'd never sat in a classroom with anyone who didn't look like me. And there I was, enrolling in freshman composition classes with 300 students, and I, the only black in that classroom. But one of the things that's untold a lot about the segregated schools of the South is that if you were a college graduate and happened to be black in 1940 or 1950 or 1960, your options were quite limited. You couldn't go to corporations and become an executive. Few were being admitted to professional schools. The job that you could get as a black with a college degree in 1940, 1950, 1960 was teaching. So therefore, the competition for teaching jobs throughout the South was fierce. And school districts that were sharp would use that abundance of talent to really staff their schools with amazing teachers. And my all-black high school had some of the best in the state. That would come to test when I tried to enroll in freshman calculus, because my advisor didn't think that I was ready for college calculus. And she said, I'm not going to allow you to take calculus. You'll have to take this algebra class instead. Non-credit, sort of demonstrate, prepare you for college calculus. I was devastated because I knew my math teacher, Mrs. Massingberg, could have been a star of Hidden Figures. She was that good. But the advisor said I had to take this remedial algebra class. So I enrolled. 3 weeks into the course, the professor teaching the class passed me a note and said she wanted to see me after class. I went to her office, and she looked at me and said, "Why are you in this class?" I told her, well, my advisor would not approve calculus, so I have to take this remedial algebra class. She said, no. Here's a note for your advisor. I want you in my calculus class if you can fit it into your schedule. So I took that note to my advisor, and she relented and allowed me to enroll in the calculus class. Now fast forward 30 years later, it's 1999, I'm sitting in my office in Hamden. I get a call from the chancellor at the University of Wisconsin inviting me to come to Madison because they have something called a Distinguished Alumni Award. And the 1999 recipient of that award was Carlton Highsmith. And she invited me to come out to the university, accept the award, and give a speech. I had no idea it was going to be as large an event as it was. When I arrived, I went into the large hall and went on stage, and I saw 1,000 people, mostly university officials, and I decided to tear up the speech I'd written and instead told them about my experience as a freshman trying to enroll in calculus. I told them essentially they should really think hard about how they treat poor black students who come to the University of Wisconsin wanting to enroll in a calculus class, because perhaps one day that person might return as recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award from the university. And as I got back to my seat, I didn't think it was that powerful a statement. There was not a dry eye in the place. People were so moved by that notion of how they had perceived me as a freshman coming to the University of Wisconsin. Well, I managed to get through that university, had my comfort zones expanded beyond what I could ever have imagined. For the first time, I had a chance to read books about me, because curriculum in the segregated system didn't have books about me. In 1969, every entering freshman at Wisconsin had to read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Every entering freshman. I was exposed to Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison for the first time. Captivated by books about me that could talk about my experience that I'd never been exposed to before. And so after graduating from Wisconsin, I took a job with a very large global packaging company. And back in those days, if you can recall, they were positions called management trainees for recent college graduates, which meant essentially you know nothing coming out of college. We, the corporation, will teach you what you need to know through this 18-month period executive training program. And so I went through this 18-month executive training program, and you're assessed, evaluated along the way, as you know. And what they do, the top finishers typically get these plum assignments. The operating headquarters that I went to was in Charlotte. The plum assignments were in New York City. So I fully expected, because I finished 4 out of a cohort of about 50, that I would be sent to New York City with one of those choice plum assignments. I was not. Given some excuses about the need for my skills at a facility in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And so there I am, sent to Connecticut, to Bridgeport, to work in that facility. Disappointed, but determined that I was going to succeed, because there's something really eerie about being the first generation black in the family who's a college graduate. There's a burden that you bear that others perhaps don't. The community is with you. They're assessing you. They're rooting for you. They want you to succeed because your success is their success. And so I had this strong desire to have my community and my grandparents and my church family back home be proud of my accomplishments, because I was the first, the trailblazer. And so there was nothing that corporation was going to do to me to make me discouraged. So I worked hard, learned a lot, made great relationships with folks in the innovation, design, engineering area. Spent a lot of time there, learned how innovation was done in the packaging space. Became good friends with Jerry Antonelli, one of my dear, dear friends who shared so much. Positioned myself for an assignment or appointment to a new job was coming up in the division, didn't get it. So I'm saying this is what it's like in the 70s. No mentors, no sponsors. Because just as important as it is to have a mentor in the corporate environment, you need a sponsor too. Someone who's going to be whispering for you when you're not there, promoting you when you're not there. In the 70s, we didn't have that. I was the first black in the division, first black at the location. It was just tired of being the first black. But that was what it was. But I was determined not to be discouraged. And so I decided to leave Rexam Corporation to go to Amstar Corporation, thinking I'd have better chances of advancing my career there. And initially, they really grabbed hold to what I could deliver to the division. 2 years, I was a division marketing services manager, and I was absolutely delighted. Took the division to heights it had never gone before. Here again, waiting for the next promotion. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, never came. And I'm sitting there thinking, I have so much to offer that's not being utilized. I used to sit and wonder sometimes, so this is what it's like. This is what it must have felt like for my grandparents, my great-grandparents. Underutilized resources, so much to offer, so much potential, but not having an opportunity to have it realized. What a waste, I would say to the division president. What a waste. There's so much I could be contributing to this division. What a waste. So in 1983, I decided, you know what? Corporate America is not where I belong. Because I want to go where I can be my very best. I can realize my full potential. And so I quit my job, much to the chagrin of my family, who looked upon my job as this monster corporate job. What are you doing, boy? You're walking away from that position? Are you out of your mind? Do you know how much money you're making? But I knew I could do more. And so, in May 20th, 1983, I opened a small little package design engineering business, a basement office at 27 Elm Street in New Haven, Connecticut. 2 years later, I was teetering on closing it because being an entrepreneur was much more difficult than I ever imagined. What was I thinking? Had all these relationships at monster companies like Procter & Gamble and Colgate-Palmolive and Unilever that I worked with over the years. Why aren't they giving me projects? Why aren't they working with me? It's amazing how much confidence they have in you as a corporate executive, less confidence when you are an entrepreneur. So 2 years after opening it, I was teetering on closing it. And my life partner through all of this was my high school sweetheart. We were sort of, I gotta say, bookworms, always in a library. And we happened to be in a library our junior year, about 3 weeks before prom, and through discussions, we discovered that neither of us had a date for the prom. And so we said, why not? Let's go. And from that junior prom experience, we knew that we were destined to be lifelong partners. So though she went to a university in North Carolina and me in Wisconsin, we still were one. Married my senior year, and my life partner was the one who said, I have faith in you, I believe in you, so if you think it's right to continue, you please do that. She was my rock. So just when I was coming home that Friday to tell her that I think this was a mistake, I need to go find a real job, I was driving back from Philadelphia. I made a phone call out of the blue, at Johnson & Johnson's Consumer Products Division, reached someone in procurement, asked her if she had some time on a Friday afternoon to listen to a pitch. And Barbara Donnelly said, come on in. So I pulled off at exit 9 on New Jersey Turnpike. I go to Johnson & Johnson's world headquarters in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I walk into her office and I pitch my company, pitch my experience, pitch my background. And I'd learned that one of the things you need to do, you need to find some hook. And so the hook I used on her was, what's the biggest problem you have that you have not solved? Because that's what we are. I'm a problem solver. What packaging problem do you have that I can help you with? She reached in her lower drawer, picked up a toothbrush called Reach. We just launched this toothbrush a year and a half ago. It is the most advanced toothbrush in the world, but somehow we're not meeting sales figures that we projected we would, and we can't figure out why we need help. And since toothbrushes are an impulse buy, meaning you spend milliseconds looking at it before you decide to buy it, the package has to be a silent salesman on the shelf. It has to grab you. And the issue here was this brush had all these monster features, but the package wasn't adequately communicating those features at point of purchase. I said, I'll take that project. Drove back and worked all weekend. Got folks I knew, and we came up with these ideas for modifying that Reach package. Took it back 3 days into the next week, Wednesday, and they were blown away. Gave me a development contract for that package. We ultimately launched it for them. They transferred all that business to us, and all of a sudden we had our first big win. We'd solved a problem for Johnson & Johnson. And armed with that in your satchel, everybody will talk to you, I discovered. So the next thing I knew, this company that I was teetering on closing had become a successful package design engineering business operating out of 27 Elm Street, New Haven, Connecticut. And we were on our way. Daughters were born. We used to sing that song, Just My Imagination, by the Temptations, a cozy little house out in the country with 2 children, maybe 3. We built that cozy little house out in the country. On vacation, enjoying that dream life that I'd always wanted for us. And then, a movie that we had gone to see in 1970 came to life for us. Ryan O'Neal and Ali MacGraw. Never, as we watched that movie with millions of others in 1970, did we ever think that would be us. But it was. The nightmare was hard to absorb, particularly when you have a 12-year-old wonderful daughter and a 10-year-old beautiful daughter looking at you saying, Dad, what do we do now? But if I think back on her life, particularly the courage that she showed toward the end, that's what gave me what I needed to move forward. She was brilliant. Speech pathologist by training, worked for New Haven Public Schools as the director of special ed. So all the speech pathologists, all the audiologists, all of the visually handicapped clinicians, all worked for her. She had a passion for helping kids who had disabilities, particularly minority kids, because she knew the challenges they would face. She had me make 2 promises to her. One, that I would help her, this is her, help her get ready, her clinicians, her pathologist, for the school year. So there she was, dictating to me PPTs, therapy programs for her kids. Never complaining, making sure her therapists were ready for the school year. The other thing she said to me, you have to promise me you'll take care of my girls. You must take care of our girls. And I would say things like, I want to trade places with you, you should be here. No. And she would try to cheer me up to say, don't feel sorry for me. I'll be okay. It's you I pray for. Because you have the tough job. And the great thing about having your own business is that you can flex your schedule to however you want it to be. So my promise to her, I kept. They never missed a soccer practice. They never missed a soccer game. They never missed a dance rehearsal. They never missed a dance recital. Never missed a parent-teacher conference. Because my promise to her was that I'd take care of her girls. At least to the best of my ability. Well, I don't know whether I did it all right, whether I was perfect. But one's a lawyer, and the other is a wonderful elementary lower school teacher. And I think they're happy. They've given me 6 delightful grandchildren that when I look at, I think of Deb all the time. And so we got through it. I got through it mostly because of the strength that I got from her. Her courage, her grace, her unselfishness. And once we were on a trajectory again to getting some semblance of normalcy, I went back to work with the business. And the business started to grow and grow and grow. And I found a new life partner, and those of you who have met her, Lita Marie is my new life partner. In 2009, I got a tremendous offer to buy my business, to sell my business, to buy my business. And so I sold my business in 2009. But one of the things that I have not decided to do is to retire, much to the chagrin of my daughters who think that I should be on a pasture someplace crazy or on a golf course playing golf. I think back to a professor that I had at Wisconsin, Dr. Matthew Holden, brilliant political scientist, talked about power and transforming communities and institutions, and talked about disparities in our society. Wealth disparities, education disparities, health disparities. And how it would take people to roll their sleeves up, to become engaged, involved, to deal with those issues. And actually challenged a lot of us to say, become entrepreneurs, create situations where you can make a difference in your community. And institutions are incredibly powerful forces within communities. Leverage institutions. So borrowing from Lin-Manuel's In the Room Where It Happens, I commit a lot of my time to being in the room where it happens. For institutions that can make a difference in the lives of people. Financial services, healthcare, community philanthropy, higher education. Because as was once said by this great Prime Minister of Great Britain, you make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give. And that's my story.
Some questions?
Sure,
All right,
absolutely.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask the first question because I got to understand why Wisconsin? How did you pick that? How did you find the school?
It was a guidance counselor, Miss Nixon,
Okay.
who brought it to my attention. Actually, she said to me, she actually was the one who put the idea in my head. She said, I think you could survive at a place other than Shaw or North Carolina Central or A&T. I want you to stretch, and I know folks who work at Wisconsin, and I think that you should apply. So it was a guidance counselor who was really, really, how can I say, really thinking outside the box, because no kids from my school went that far to school.
That's great. That's great. So what are you all curious about? Maybe a question? Yeah.
Well, we know your daughter's top. You did pretty darn.
Thank you, thank you. They made it so easy, though. So incredibly proud of them, how they never gave in, and they could have easily given in.
Yeah.
They were strong. They were strong for me. They helped me a lot get through. There were moments, of course. There were moments. For those of African American descent, you'll understand this. My biggest challenge in moments when I wanted to give up was dealing with hair. you knew that was coming, right? There was this one morning when my youngest had a desire to wear a particular hairstyle, and she came to me for help. And I frustratingly could not get it to what she wanted, and so her tears led to my tears. It was just a horrible morning, so.
What else, Bill?
You spoke of several people within institutions who really gave you a boost.
Yeah.
When you were becoming an entrepreneur, were there people in that position who were kind of unexpected
Yeah.
supports?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And if I had hours, I would tell you about many of them. Yeah, there were. A tall Irish Catholic chap from New York, Gary Cronin, was probably one of my biggest supporters. He was serving as a vice president for sales and marketing of a global packaging company, and he facilitated so many things for me. He became a mentor to me, a sponsor for me as well. Gary is one of a kind. He really is. There was Vince Kahidi, who worked at Hubline back in the day when Hubline was a large consumer products company in Hartford. There's Robert Garapi, a French-Canadian guy who was invaluable to me, Ron Serkas. So lots and lots of people who stepped up and gave me advice and counsel and facilitated us along the way.
Can you talk a little bit about your mindset? It seems like there's a parallel between you taking the leap to leave North Carolina and go to Wisconsin, and then taking a professional leap to this no-net position of being an entrepreneur, and how you give that same advice to other people in similar situations.
Yeah, we actually have an entrepreneurship academy associated with CONCAT, because I believe that too many people don't really appreciate the transformative power of entrepreneurship. As Dr. Holden said, if you look at some of the largest corporations in the country, they're all founded by entrepreneurs. And so we try to expose youngsters to it. It's not for everyone. It's pure competition. You have to be able to understand it's going to be warfare every day, and you have got to have a mindset that you're going to win. No matter what, you're going to win. But I think in my case, I try to be not sort of unrealistic in terms of expectations of my being an entrepreneur, that I was going to be, but I try to be sort of reasoned to say, okay, I know I have skills. I know how to do this. I've done this. I know, based upon my exposure to the market, that that large consumer products companies are looking for innovation. They don't care where innovation comes from, but they need innovation. Because Procter & Gamble is trying to beat Colgate, and Kraft is trying to beat Quaker. That's the reality. And to the extent that you can bring them ideas that gives them an advantage, they'll work with you. And I knew that. I knew it was just a matter of finding that reach moment when someone could recognize what skills that we could bring. But entrepreneurship is not easy. And I try to tell kids that. It's hard. Yep.
How do you remember or sum it up in the face of loss? I don't have to accept this. And just how do you move past that?
I guess it's sort of my DNA. Like I said, I grew up, and my grandfather still, I lost him a few years back at 94. He had just a fourth grade education, but he's still the wisest man that I've ever met. He tried to instill in us a hopefulness about the future. Things can be better, will be better, if you work hard, try and strive for excellence, be humble, and help wherever you can. Help others to the extent you can. And that's sort of the mindset that was instilled in me. I maintain I was always his favorite because he'd say I was the one who listened and applied all of his teachings. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
From the back.
You talked about the power of being the first generation to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, how did that play out in your family? What did that burden feel like? If it felt like a burden, what did it feel like?
I'm going to give you a really honest answer. It was really hard. It's a complex situation. Because what happens, particularly at a place like Madison, and you went to law school there, so you know, you are exposed to the world there. And things you know to be true, when you go home, people are holding on to things that are untrue. That's not factual. That's not the way it is. How do you walk that line of being respectful and humbled to your heritage without embarrassing or insulting them by that's not true. That's not the way it is. So that was the hard part. Not that I was the wise guy, the smart guy, but I knew things were not the way that folks at home thought they were. That was the more pronounced, more difficult thing for me. I loved sort of carrying the banter for my hometown, Bethel. My church would raise offerings to send me off to school because they were so invested in me. I welcome that. I look forward to that. But was that part of not wanting to insult, embarrass, the residual, I don't want to call it ignorance, but just not knowing. And not knowing that they didn't know. That's my response.
How does your experience of not having sponsors at some points throughout your career inform the way you think about sponsoring others now?
I am the #1 booster and sponsor right now. I know how important it is. At all the boards I sit on, Key Corp as an example, the executives there know, particularly the African Americans, know how I feel about it. So I'm constantly bombarded with them looking for advice, counsel, and what recommendations I would make and whether or not I would make a phone call for them. So I am very much upfront and very active in sponsoring young executives within corporations right now because I know how important it is. Great to have a mentor, but as important to have, if not more so, to have a sponsor. Okay.
Anybody else?
I love it. As a matter of fact, I forgot to bring him inside. I have a Reach toothbrush for each of you. I do. Seriously, I do. I have a Reach toothbrush for each of you. So you'll remember this evening. Usually when I give my talks to kids, I always have toothbrushes for the kids.
How did you get started? Though you just came in, how did you get started and what kept you to get to the point where you are now?
In business, like I said, I had a 10-year corporate career. So I knew how the game was played. I knew what large companies in the consumer product space were looking for. And I came along at a time when there was a technology boom as well. In the late 80s, PageMaker, Illustrator, Quark Express, desktop publishing programs just were coming online. And Macintosh was building machines fast enough to run them. And what we realized early on is that a document, like word processing, a document is a package 4 sides. And so that desktop publishing technology could be used to design a 4-sided folding carton because a document is 4 sides of a package. And so we were the first to apply desktop publishing, those programs, to package design. At the same time, computer-aided design, CADs were coming along. And we had some smart folks in Auburn, Mass, who were able to marry our graphics digital capability with our CAD capability was coming online. And so we were this small design engineering business in New Haven, Connecticut, producing these design concepts that people were wondering, how are they doing that in such record time? Because we were able to leverage emerging technology of the late 80s and early 90s. That's one of our keys to success. The other is just relationships. I tell people all the time, the single most important factor for our success over the years is developing relationships with wonderful people. People willing to make a phone call for you, give you a meeting, give you a recommendation. Even to this day, and I sold the business over 10 years ago, the relationship. Say again? Specialized Packaging Group, SPG. It exists in different forms. It was bought by a private equity firm. They used my business as a platform to build other businesses. I sold it to them. It had revenues about $200 million. Right now, they're about $1.4 billion because they've done 4 other acquisitions since I sold them the business. How did I sell it to them? They actually came to me through a
That might be an offside sidebar. You might be able to get a consultation.
How did the negotiation go? Even if it's like in 5 seconds, how did it go there?
Well, they came to me with an offer. I said no. No, they wanted to meet. I met. They wanted to know if I had a price. I said yes. I gave them the price. They said no. They went back and they said, well, we can meet your price if we have these things. They gave us a list of due diligence items. So over about 3-week period of time, we were able to get from no to yes. And then another 6 months of formal due diligence.
What made you say yes?
The price. The price.